When we think about the invention of the internet, we picture lone male geniuses, Vint Cerf, Bob Kahn, Tim Berners-Lee, working in isolation. This story is simple, but it's incomplete. The internet was not built by a handful of men. It was a massive, collaborative effort involving thousands of brilliant minds, many of them women. These women were not assistants. They were architects, programmers, engineers, and visionaries. They designed protocols, managed networks, and wrote the first lines of code that made digital communication possible. Yet their names are often missing from the history books. This erasure wasn't accidental. It reflected a world unwilling to see women as technological pioneers. By focusing only on men, we create a myth that technology is a man's world, discouraging young women from entering the field. It's time to challenge this myth and reveal the hidden figures who shaped the digital age. The real story of the internet is one of collaboration and countless unsung heroes. Learning about the women who built the internet changes our understanding of innovation. We're reclaiming a more accurate, inclusive history. Women have always been at the forefront of technological change. Their legacy is embedded in the networks that connect our world. It's a legacy that deserves to be known and celebrated. In the early days of computing, programming was considered women's work. The massive machines like ENIAC were built by men, but women programmed them, often inventing the discipline from scratch. Grace Hopper, a Navy Rear Admiral, invented the first compiler, making programming accessible and efficient. The 6 women who programmed ENIAC, Kathleen McNulty, Jean Jennings, Betty Snyder, Marlyn Westcott, Frances Billis, and Ruth Lichterman, had no manual. They figured it out themselves. They physically wired the machine for each new problem, making their work crucial to wartime calculations. Yet, when ENIAC was unveiled, the men were celebrated, and the women were ignored. This pattern was common. Women's intellectual contributions were downplayed or overlooked. They were the human infrastructure of the digital revolution. As programming became powerful and profitable, women were systematically pushed out of the world they helped create. The perception of programming as women's work was a historical accident born of sexism, but it shaped the industry's future. The women who created the foundations of software were erased from its story. Their legacy, though hidden, remains vital. The modern internet began with ARPANET, a decentralized network funded by the US Department of Defense. While men like Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn are famous for TCP/IP, they weren't alone. Elizabeth Jake Feinler led the Network Information Center at Stanford, managing the ARPANET's entire directory, the original internet phone book. Her team developed the first domain naming scheme. Media Group scanned original ARPANET domain documents, close-up of typed domain list from 1980s, archival photo of early internet domain, brainstorming notes, e-stocker distribute equally, .com, .edu, .gov, .org. This made the network navigable and scalable, turning complex addresses into human-friendly names. Feinler was one of the first digital librarians, creating order out of chaos. Another key figure, Radia Perlman, who arrived as ARPANET, was evolving. As networks grew, new problems emerged: fragility, complexity, and the risk of collapse. Radia, a brilliant MIT engineer, was tasked with solving one of the most critical challenges. Her work became fundamental to how networks operate today. These women were architects of the digital world. As Ethernets connected in the 1980s, a major problem appeared: infinite loops. Redundant paths, meant for reliability, caused data to circulate endlessly, creating broadcast storms that crashed entire networks. The only fix was to shut everything down and restart. A disaster for a system meant to be robust. As networks grew, so did the risk of catastrophic failure. The dream of a global network was at risk. Redundancy, meant to help, became its greatest weakness. This was the challenge Radia Perlman faced at Digital Equipment Corporation. Her manager needed a protocol to allow redundancy without destructive loops, and he needed it fast. The pressure was immense. The future of networking depended on an elegant solution. Radia had to invent a system that balanced reliability with stability. The fate of the internet hung in the balance. She was about to change everything. Radia Perlman met the challenge with brilliance. In just days, she invented the Spanning Tree Protocol, STP. STP allows network bridges to find the best path for data, blocking routes that could create loops. It forms a stable, tree-like structure. No circles, no chaos. Bridges elect a route, calculate shortest paths, and put extra routes on standby. If a path fails, a standby route activates instantly. The genius of STP. It's self-configuring, no human intervention needed. Plug in any configuration, and the protocol sorts it out. Networks became robust and stable, with redundancy and no broadcast storms. Radia's invention became the industry standard, foundational to Ethernet networks everywhere. Every time you use Wi-Fi, you rely on her work. She's called the mother of the internet, though she credits many contributors. Without STP, large-scale networks wouldn't exist as they do. Her elegant solution solved a crisis and enabled the internet's explosive growth. It's an invisible force keeping our world connected. Despite their foundational work, women like Perlman, Feinler, and Hopper have often been left in the shadows. Credit flowed to their male colleagues, who held leadership roles and public recognition. Women's painstaking, brilliant work was rendered invisible, absorbed into the legacy of men. Cultural bias assumed women weren't capable of high-level technical work, making it easier to credit men. The myth of the lone male genius persisted, erasing female pioneers from history. This wasn't always malicious. Sometimes the system simply wasn't designed to recognize women's achievements. The result? A generation of female pioneers written out of the story. Reclaiming this history isn't about diminishing men's contributions. It's about completing the picture. The women who built our digital world deserve their place in the spotlight. Ironically, programming began as women's work. Early ads for programming jobs targeted women, and they made up much of the workforce. As software's power and profit grew, its status rose, and men entered the field in droves. Programming shifted from a clerical female job to a prestigious, male-dominated profession. The image of the programmer changed from collaborative women to the myth of the lone male hacker. University programs and tech companies began to favor men, and the culture became exclusionary. Women pioneers were marginalized and pushed out. The percentage of women in computer science plummeted as the industry boomed. The true origins of software were erased, replaced by a male-centered narrative. Gender bias reshaped the industry, hiding its real history. Erasing women from tech history has real consequences today. Girls rarely see themselves in the story of technology, which is dominated by male figures and stereotypes. This lack of role models discourages them from pursuing tech careers. Stories of Perlman, Hopper, and Feinler are more than history. They're inspiration. Knowing women built the internet empowers the next generation to overcome bias. The myth that tech is a man's world leads to exclusion and discrimination. Remembering women's contributions reveals the gender gap is a bug, not a feature. Sharing these stories corrects the record and builds a more inclusive future. Diversity isn't new, it's a return to tech's roots. The women who built the internet are a vital part of our shared heritage. The history of the internet is full of missing pages, especially those about women. This silence is the result of decades of cultural bias favoring the myth of the male genius. Remembering is an act of resistance against this flawed narrative. We must reclaim the names and legacies of women like Hopper, Feinler, and Perlman. Their stories are not just women's stories, they're central to technology itself. They belong in our textbooks, documentaries, and collective memory. Sharing these stories is everyone's responsibility: educators, journalists, tech leaders, and parents. Every time we tell the story of a female pioneer, we challenge stereotypes and inspire new generations. The goal: a future where no woman's contribution is hidden. A world where girls see a clear path in tech, unburdened by myths. The women who built the internet solved problems with brilliance and determination. Their legacy is not just in code, but in the example they set. It's our job to make sure that example shines for all to see.